Kzarny. It's June 26, 1992, at City Park, Brookdale, Minnesota. Chapter 1. The Unwanted. As I sat alone in my cramped room within the shabby Greenhaven, Minnesota dwelling, I was aware of the musty scent of aged timber that permeated the air. The space was modestly furnished, with only a mattress placed directly on the floor for me to sleep on and a basket overflowing with rumpled clothes, serving as my sole storage unit. Yet, my walls were decorated with posters of my beloved rock stars, showcasing my undying admiration for them. However, amidst the lackluster setting, there was one item that brought me immense joy: my prized possession, the boombox. It was a true gem, equipped with a CD player, and I had just acquired a new CD, which I was eagerly listening to at full volume. Suddenly, my stepmom Missy barged into my room, interrupting my euphoria. "Shut the garbage shit off." I turned to look at her as I was singing the song right at her. She reaches over and snatches the plug out of the wall. "What the fuck, Missy, I was listening to that," I say, in protested. Her response came in a stern voice: "I am your mother." I raised an eyebrow, questioning her idea. "No, you're my stepmom, Missy," I retorted. She shot back at me: "I'm the only mom your delinquent ass will ever have." The sadness of that thought turned into fuming rage, and I could feel the heat rising inside me. Before I knew it, I was screaming at the top of my lungs, my voice cracking with the intensity of my emotion. "Fuck you, bitch." As I stood there, frozen, staring at her with hatred in my eyes, my stepmother began to stomp towards me with a look of pure rage on her face. Just as she was about to reach me, her boyfriend Doug appeared from around the corner, grabbing her by the arm and pulling her away from me. "Go in the other room, darling," he said, his voice calm and collected. "I'll deal with this little piece of shit." Doug was a repulsive man with a thick, greasy 70s-style mustache and a slicked-over haircut. He wore a button-up plaid shirt and a pair of corduroy pants that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. He exuded an air of smug superiority that made my skin crawl, and I couldn't help but wonder what my stepmother saw in him. He had a smug expression on his face as he leaned against the door frame. "The only reason you have a roof over your head is because I decided to date your mother," he sneered. I looked at him with a mix of anger and disgust and replied, "She's not my mom, Doug." I couldn't believe how insensitive he was being. It was bad enough that he was dating my mom, but to act like he was doing me a favor by allowing me to live under the same roof as him was just too much. I pushed him out of my room and slammed the door shut, feeling a wave of frustration and sadness wash over me. As I sat there on the floor, back up against the wall, knees to my chest, I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed with emotion. I reached for the only picture I had of my dad and mom, who had left me when I was just a kid. In the photo, my dad was standing with my mom, who looked young and carefree, in front of an old trailer with a lion painted on it. As I looked at my dad's smile in the photo, I started to feel a lump form in my throat. I missed him so much and wondered why he would leave me in such a horrendous place. But as my thoughts turned to anger, I realized that I needed to focus on the present and do whatever I could to make the best of my situation. The sound of a knock on the window startles me, and I quickly wipe away the tears streaming down my face. It's Bobby, my brother from another mother. I stand up, still feeling the weight of my problems on my shoulders, and open the window to greet him. "What's up, bro?" I whisper, trying to hide the sadness in my voice. Without wasting any time, Bobby gets straight to the point. "We need to go to Bruiser's house. Something big is going down, and we need to be there for our brothers." I quickly switch gears and prepare myself for duty. "But I'm grounded," I protest. Bobby reassures me that he's got my back and that Missy and Doug are too busy fooling around to notice my absence. With a sense of urgency, I pop the screen off my window, grab my Misfits jean jacket, and jump out the window, closing it behind me. "Bobby, meet me on the next block behind the house," I instruct him. As he rides away on his PK Ripper, I make my way behind the house, careful not to be seen by anyone. I sneak into the garage through the back door, and there it is, my red line Harley. It's the last thing my father gave me before he took his own life, and it holds a special place in my heart. As I brush away the tears from my eyes, I jump on my bike and ride out the back door, zigzagging behind the neighbors' houses and out to the road behind the house. Bobby is waiting for me, and we speed off towards Bruiser's house, ready to face whatever challenge awaits us. As we made our way towards the trailer park, the wind whipped against our faces as we rode our bikes. I rode next to Bobby, and we approached Bruiser's trailer, the sound of his parents fighting echoing through the park. As we pulled up, we exchanged a knowing look. We'd been here before. We knocked on the door, and a woman answered. It was Bruiser's mom, Dolores. Her face was swollen, one eye barely able to open. Despite her injuries, she greeted us with the sweetest voice we'd ever heard and told us that Alfred was in the back. As soon as we stepped inside the trailer, we heard a loud voice coming from the back. Bruiser was yelling, "That's not my name." His father, from the other end of the trailer, responded with a deafening roar, "Respect your mother, or I'm coming back there." After thanking Dolores for allowing us in, we made our way down the narrow hallway that led to Bruiser's room. The space he occupies is incredibly small, barely enough to accommodate his bed, which takes up the majority of the room. The closet is in shambles with missing doors and a pole hanging by a single side. All of his clothes are strewn on the floor, and his dresser, situated to one side of the room, is covered in graffiti that has been etched out by a black marker. The quotes on the dresser mostly depict extinction and are quite unusual. The walls of the room are adorned with old, heavy metal posters that have faded with time. The sound of distant arguing constantly fills the cramped space, adding to the sense of claustrophobia. As I stood beside Bobby, our friend Bruiser turned to face us with a determined expression. "We've got to go pick up Allison and meet up at the clubhouse," he said. We followed him out of his room, down the hallway, and out the front door. The sun was shining brightly, and a cool breeze was blowing as we made our way around to the back of the trailer where Bruiser's Schwinn Predator was chained to a water pipe. He expertly unlocked the padlock and removed the chain, wrapping it securely around the seat post before jumping onto his bike. Bobby and I quickly followed suit, and we pedaled off towards Allison's house, excited for whatever adventure lay ahead. Our group had recently welcomed a new member, Allison, and she was unlike any other girl we had known. With her leather jacket, pink mohawk, and misfits shirt. Attached to her pants were chains that grazed her knees. She was the epitome of a 70s punk girl. But there was something more to her. You could sense a deep inner turmoil and pain, which gave her an edgy and raw aura. Despite that, she had a fierce determination to stand out, which was hard to ignore. Allison was like a magnet that drew people towards her. Allison's home was a facade of normalcy, a veneer that thinly veiled the grim reality within. The exterior might have boasted a well-kept lawn and cheerful paint, but inside, it was a different story, a narrative of neglect and discomfort. Her mother, a figure often found in a state of narcotic-induced slumber, had a predilection for the numbing escape provided by opioids. The living room, where she lay, was a stark contrast to the seemingly idyllic family home, with prescription bottles serving as a reminder of her vice. Her father's presence was even more disconcerting. He was the type of man whose proximity set off alarm bells, whose touch lingered too long, skirting the edges of propriety. His offers of a casual beer were tainted with suspicion, the underlying intent murky and unsettling. In this house, every corner whispered caution, and every interaction was a careful dance to avoid the hidden dangers that lurked beneath the surface of domestic life. It was a place where one learned to tread lightly, to observe from a distance, and to guard against the shadows that dwelled in plain sight. The knock on the door reverberated through the house, a stark contrast to the unease that filled the air. Allison's father answered, his gaze lingering just a moment too long, an uncomfortable scrutiny that felt like an intrusion. His voice carried a feigned joviality as he called out to Allison, "Allison, your boyfriends are here," his words heavy with implication. We stood hesitantly in the entryway, the threshold between us and the disquieting atmosphere of the main house. Allison was a flurry of motion, her urgency palpable as she scrambled to collect her belongings. "They're not my boyfriends, Steve. They're my friends," she corrected him firmly, her tone laced with exasperation. Settling on the couch to secure her Doc Martens, Allison's focus was solely on the task at hand. Her father's presence loomed, his hand reaching out under the guise of affection, an unwelcome touch that prompted a swift rebuke. "Stop it," she snapped, her annoyance clear, yet tempered by the need to leave without further confrontation. His persistence was unsettling, cloaked in the language of love, yet devoid of its true meaning. "Sweetheart, I just love you. Touching you is just how I show my love," he insisted, oblivious or indifferent to the boundaries he overstepped. With a mix of determination and discomfort, Allison rose, her boots half-tied, her actions speaking louder than any words could. "I'll just finish tying this outside," she declared, her movement towards the door a silent plea for escape. We moved aside, a silent support, as she brushed past us, eager to put distance between herself and the oppressive walls of her home. The garage door groaned open, a stark contrast to the silence that had enveloped us moments before. Allison emerged, her movements deliberate as she reached for her bike, a white and blue Skyway that seemed too vibrant against the garage's dark palette. She paused, her hands deftly moving to tie her boots, but her gaze was distant, fixed on some unseen point in the distance. "Don't you guys say a fucking word. I don't want to hear about it. Someday, he will have a fucking bad accident." She spat out the words with a venom that made the air around us heavy with unspoken threats. We stood, rooted to the spot, the gravity of her words anchoring us in a sea of helplessness. What do you say in a situation like that? Words felt inadequate, trivial even. Except for Bruiser. He always had something to say. "I got my gun on me. We can make it look like an accident, or maybe somebody broke in," he offered, his voice a low rumble, as if he was ready to tilt the world on its axis to right the wrongs inflicted upon Allison. Bobby interjects. "We got to head to the clubhouse. Joel is waiting for us there." Allison looks at Bruiser with a severe look. "Next time." "It sounds like we got more important things to deal with right now." Bruiser gives her his mischievous smile. As we set off on our bikes towards the clubhouse, the wind whipped through our hair and the sun shone down on us, creating a sense of freedom and excitement. Joel, the leader of our gang, always had a serious expression on his face. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy who always had his eyes on the prize. It was clear that making money was his top priority. As we arrived at the clubhouse, a dilapidated building on the outskirts of town, it was a rundown and abandoned place. It's a gloomy little house that has been declared unfit for habitation. It is a small, single-level abode spanning only 750 square feet. The roof of the house is in a state of disrepair, allowing water to seep through and make the interior consistently damp. The musty atmosphere is exacerbated by the fact that the house is dimly lit, and the dingy windows let in only a feeble amount of light, casting eerie shadows on the damp walls. Despite the inhospitable conditions, it was our secret hideaway, a place where we could be ourselves and plan our next big thing. As I entered the room, an uneasy feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. The place was deserted, and Joel had not turned up yet. I tried to shake off the feeling and headed straight for the fridge. Upon opening it, my eyes landed on the familiar sight of beer bottles. I quickly grabbed 4 of them and made my way to the main room, where I distributed them among my friends. As we sipped our drinks, I couldn't help but wonder why we were here. Bobby seemed to sense my confusion and spoke up, revealing that he had received a call from Joel asking him to gather the rest of us and convene at the clubhouse. As I take a swig of my beer, I can't help but wonder if the topic of discussion is the recent incidents involving the Northsiders. The news of Frankie being taken out has been circulating and it's been a hot topic. In the meanwhile, Bruiser, who's sitting next to me, opens his beer and tips it up. He finishes it in one go and walks towards the refrigerator to grab another one. As he looks back at us, he tells us that Matt and Todd made a grave mistake of selling to an undercover. Now, they are nowhere to be found. After 15 minutes of waiting, the sound of a car engine reaches your ears. It's a distinctive rumble that you recognize as Joel's '65 Impala. The car is a sight to behold, with its glossy black paint job, powerful 396 cubic inch engine, a 4-barrel carburetor, and dual exhausts complete with headers. As you listen to the car approaching, Allison next to you smirks and comments, "It seems someone's got a little dick." I gaze out of the back window and notice a car pulling into the back street. As I watch, a man steps out of the car and starts walking across the back lawn. It's Joel, and he has a determined look on his face. He barges in and addresses us with an air of urgency. "Guys," he exclaims, "we're in deep trouble. The Chavez brothers are planning to cut us out of the deal now that Frankie is in the hospital and Matt and Todd got busted by the cops for selling blow. We're on our own now. It's evident that Matt and Todd's recent run-in with the law and Frankie's hospitalization have made things much more difficult for us." Joel paces back and forth, his eyes darting around the room, his hand gripping his hair tightly. "They don't think we can handle that whole kilo by ourselves," he mutters under his breath. He stops, turns towards the wall, and slams his fist against it. "What are we gonna do? We can't let those Northsiders come in here and take all our money, beat up our guys, and think they run these streets." His voice rises with each word, his eyes blazing with determination. It's time to take action and show them who's boss. With a fierce expression, Bruiser rises to his feet, radiating an intense aura of anger. "Fuck them, guys. Let's take it back to them. Take out a couple of their guys." Joel nods, his face hardening as he looks around at the rest of the crew. I jump to my feet, determined to be the voice of reason in the midst of this chaos. "I admire your enthusiasm, but let's be realistic here. They have an entire army at their disposal, and we're just 5 people. We don't stand a chance." I glance over at Joel, and I can see the fire in his eyes beginning to dwindle. "But wait, I have a better plan," I continue. "Let's talk to the Chavez brothers and see if we can't negotiate a deal. Maybe we can turn the situation in our favor." Joel says, "Okay. I'll go talk to them and meet me at the park later on tonight." Joel swiftly turns around, his eyes locking onto Bobby's beer bottle. He grabs it with determina. Tyan and drinks the remaining contents in a single gulp. Once finished, he hands the empty bottle back to Bobby, his tone of voice stern and serious. "You shouldn't be drinking anyway. You're too young." Bobby shrugs nonchalantly and hurls the bottle at the wall, causing it to shatter into countless sharp fragments that rain down around them. "Whatever, man. Just be careful out there," he mutters before turning away. Joel doesn't respond, instead making his way out of the back door and into the yard. He walks across the uneven terrain to the back street where his car is parked, ready to take off. Bruiser abruptly stands up from his chair, his hand reaching for his gun that's resting on the table beside him. He grips it tightly and points it towards the wall across the room. His voice is tense as he says, "I think we should just take out the Chavez brothers." With a swift action, he pulls back the slide on his 9mm Beretta, and the metallic sound echoes throughout the room. He empties the clip into the wall across from us. The suddenness of the action makes everyone jump, and Allison lets out a scream. "Put that fucking thing away," she yells, her eyes narrowed with anger. "You want to get us all caught?" I rose swiftly, my hand shooting out to press the gun's barrel downward. Bruiser's reflex was quicker. He parried my hand aside and redirected the weapon towards the wall. Our eyes locked, a silent conversation in a glance. "So this is how you want to die, in a shootout with a drug lord?" I challenged. Bruiser's response was a nonchalant magazine swap. "We all gotta go someday," he muttered, the click of the fresh clip a punctuation to his fatalism. Bobby, visibly shaken, pressed himself against the wall, his eyes mirroring the fear he felt. I think Joel is right. We should stick to the plan." "I don't want to die in a shootout with a drug lord," he stammered, voicing the dread that hung in the air. I stepped into the center of the room, raising my hands in a calming gesture. "Everybody, just relax. We're going to the park. We'll wait for Joel. Then we'll make a plan." "Okay." A collective nod rippled through the room, a silent accord. "All right, Let's grab our bikes and head to the park, I declared. Bruiser tucked the gun back into his waistband with a finality that seemed to close the chapter on the tension. We seized our bikes and filed out the door, the rhythm of our ride to the park a temporary escape from the night's gravity. Chapter 2.